What's up, everybody? Welcome back to DMW Sports. Here to talk Max marquee matchups for week two. We are here for the Lions and the Chicago Bears. And I'm fortunate today we're going to do a little bit different. We're going to start out kind of with the Bears perspective. I'm happy to have a new guest onto the channel. Happy to have him on. We've got Joey Sports Guy from CHGO covering the Bears, covering Big Ten football as well. Going to welcome him on the stage. Joey, how are you doing today?
I'm good, DMac, man. Thanks for having me on the show, dude.
Absolutely happy to have you on. Obviously, our mutual friend Sean was fortunate enough to put us in touch, and definitely happy to have you on to talk about the Chicago Bears team that's going into a nice, exciting, kind of period in their time. New head coach, obviously Caleb Williams, different pieces coming together, and that's really where I want to start out, kind of asking you. As far as somebody that's been obviously covering the Bears for a bit and being able to be around kind of different iterations of the team, does this feel different? Is there more excitement around this era of Bears football maybe than there has been in a good bit of time?
Excitement combined with terror and dread and depression. And no, I will look. So, unfortunately, the cycle, what they say in True Detective, where time is a flat circle. We keep cycling through a lot of these quarterbacks. So, we do always enter it with a healthy amount of optimism and a healthy amount of excitement.
Mhm.
I think honestly, if you want to talk about excitement and if you want to talk about things maybe being a little bit different around here, I think that the excitement and the belief and the hope in Ben Johnson is a little bit of what's different this time around.
Mhm.
When you go all the way back to like Mitch Trubisky, Mitch Trubisky had all the whatever, he had all the tools and he had all the skills and he was ready to take it over, but everyone had questions about him at North Carolina. Justin Fields came from a great pedigree with Ohio State, balled out versus Clemson in a college game, but came in and people asked, can he be an effective and efficient passer? And I think with Caleb Williams, I think nobody denies that his arm talent is incredibly special and incredibly next level. But a lot of people had questions about him coming over as a Pac 12 quarterback from that kind of offensive system and learning the intricacies and nuances of NFL football. So we had a lot of excitement. A lot of it was fear. Obviously, this week one didn't work out the way that we wanted to. So we're holding on to excitement as much as we can. But trust me, terror and dread is right around the corner because we're Bears fans.
I know that's the thing that I've heard from Bears fans that I've talked to personally, just in general, about the long history that you guys feel about excitement in certain periods, but that terror dread always kind of be right around the corner that comes along with being a Bears fan. I want to ask a little bit about Week One, and obviously this is coming after that Monday Night Football game against the Vikings, in which you guys were able to jump out to the lead. Things were going well through three quarters, and then kind of wasn't able to bring it on home in the fourth quarter, even despite that late scoring drive. Obviously, the kicker did not necessarily execute what may have been necessary to give you guys that last gasp of breath as well. So coming off of that week one game, going up against a divisional opponent, obviously at home, give me some of the things that maybe were concerning coming out of that game, and then some things that were more positive aspects that have you looking forward to the rest of the season.
Yeah, so obviously, DMAC, when we talk about it right now, heading into week two, I think we're all going to say to ourselves, like, let's all pump the brakes on how we feel and know that this is a really long season.
Hmm.
Having said that, though, some of the characteristics that Caleb has brought over from last year that I think we have to live with a little bit as a young player trying to ascend in the league is that Caleb Williams is a very streaky quarterback. And when I say streaky, I mean streaky in game. So
Hmm.
what we liked a lot about Ben Johnson was they came out, they had a great script to open up, and it wasn't sexy. It was a lot of check down stuff, but Caleb looked great on that opening drive to score a touchdown. But what's happened a lot of times last year is that Caleb will look great for anywhere between 8 to 15 plays or a couple drives in a row. And the same can be true on the other side, where he can look a little skittish, not exactly know where his eyes are supposed to go. The accuracy goes a little bit, and that can happen for 8 to 10, 15 plays in a row. So it's definitely been really hot and cold for Caleb throughout his young career. Obviously, last year was a bit of a mess, and we were supposed to start anew with this whole new chapter with Ben Johnson. So it was a little disappointing to see some of those habits kind of creep themselves back up into this week one game. I know,
Hmm.
obviously, with Brian Flores, he's got a great defense. He knows how to call and bring pressure on a young quarterback. So Caleb can still make all the throws. The accuracy is still a little bit of a problem. He gets a little streaky. He gets a little out of rhythm. And when he gets into rhythm, he gains confidence. And then DMac, I'll just tell you, like the one that's really being hammered right now throughout Chicago, and this is kind of the scariest one, is that I think he's having problems getting in and out of the huddle and getting everyone on the line of scrimmage at the same time with the cadence.
Mhm.
And I think that because his cadence is a little bit different and he's not mimicking it play by play, I think that's why you're seeing some of the false starts. You're seeing some of the wide receivers that go in motion a little bit out of order. And when you look at the Lions offense the last 3 years, a historical offense, a lot of it was crazy pre-snap motion, incredibly tight, clean operation pre-snap. And then obviously a lot of success post-snap too as well. So it's a work in progress here, man.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make this as something where I'm, as a Bears fan or even as a football analyst, trying to bury Caleb because he is a young player. But I guess it might take a little bit longer for this offense to maybe look the way that Ben wants to look, and I think the way that Bears fans want to look. And that puts the Lions in an advantage this week because this could be a month of a bit of a work in progress for the Bears.
Yeah, I think some of those pre-snap penalties that you particularly pointed out, we heard throughout kind of the summer, and then into training camp. Ben Johnson was hammering away at the details, and he is a very detail-oriented coach in the way that he goes about his business. Obviously, you mentioned the Detroit Lions and their motion-heavy offense over these last few years. That involves your pre-snap cadence, obviously, making sure everybody is on the same page on a consistent basis, and making sure that the operation is, being able to be carried out on time. And then you add in obviously new center coming into this system, Drew Dahlman coming over. Fortunately, a vet still to be able to work with Caleb as well, and then trying to get onto the page with these, some of them returning, some of them new pieces. In addition to this entirely new system, understandable that you'd have to work out those kinks, but then you add in the Caleb up and downs because, again, like you mentioned at the top, incredible arm talent, ability, in my opinion, to mitigate a lot of sacks. I think he actually, was able to avoid a lot of pressure that the Vikings were able to create last night, or I should say Monday night. But even still, those accuracy sprays, those things coming can be a little bit difficult to work through. Go ahead.
Well, and DMAC, like to your point too, is that like if we can try and simplify this for a young player right now, and I think a lot of people are getting so hungry and thirsty to like jump on the take, right, of like Caleb is a bust or what's happening to Caleb is unfair. I think what is fair is that, like anything in life, I think the game is just moving too fast for him right now. And just like when you're trying to learn something, you're trying to learn something intricate. Whenever you do it at first, it's always going to feel a little overwhelming to you. But the more that you get repetition with it, everything begins to slow down, and then you get to find confidence within that slowing down of that process. And I'll be honest, I just feel like things are moving a little fast for him in terms of like getting the call, spitting it out right, getting to the line, lining everybody up, getting your motions ready, getting your cadence right, and then once the ball is snapped, you got like monsters racing at you. So
Yep.
I'm not trying to like make an excuse, but I'm just trying to empathize with what he's going through right now and try and create a realistic expectation for myself as a Bears fan that this might be a couple of weeks. You know what I mean? This offense might not look the way that it looks, hopefully November and December.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that those are absolutely great things to point out for what Caleb is kind of going through. And I think at times you talk about the hot and cold nature of it. Sometimes the game feels like it is moving too fast for him in that certain aspects. I think that sometimes that affects his accuracy. Where, when the first one that comes to mind is the one that people will point out of the last drive, the touchdown possibility to DJ Moore. He's
Yeah.
trying to hold that corner to that side, and it feels like he just rushes through it instead of, because he has such great arm talent, you can do things at your pace in the way in which you're going through it, and being able to trust and being able to do it. And I think sometimes he rushes through it, sometimes it throws off his mechanics, or just he misses the point. But again, to your point, I think with him, young guy coming into all of these changes, this will need some time to get worked out, but I'm still optimistic of how it'll look. That being said, as far as week one was concerned, anything positive that you came out of that game feeling as far as some things that you see on either side of the ball? Certainly, it could be on offense too.
Uh, Things that I thought were positive. Obviously, Nashawn Wright picking up JJ McCarthy felt really good, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm a little skeptical on JJ McCarthy in the NFC North landscape of things. I think he's a guy that also is going to have a learning curve, so that was really nice to see. Um, Positives. I'm trying, man.
I understand.
So here, I got some positives for you. So
Okay.
positive one is that I'm a big fan of the 7th-round running back Kyle Monangai, and the
Hmm.
positive is he walked out of that week healthy because they didn't give him a carry. So that's positive. It's great seeing DJ. It's great seeing DJ Moore get schemed up. Now, obviously, as we talked about a little bit, now you have to complete that with connecting the ball to that said receiver. And honestly, outside of the pre-snap penalties, which is annoying for any NFL fan, not just a Chicago Bears fan. I thought the offensive line held up pretty well. And maybe that's in kind of proportion to how bad our offensive line was last year. But I do think that there was plenty of moments where Caleb had a really nice pocket to sit in. And I think last year the biggest problem with the Bears was that they were getting all this pressure up front in on the interior. So the heat was in his face like right away, which is not a great way to learn the position, especially as a rookie NFL quarterback. I thought the interior with Joe Thuney, Dahlman was okay. Jonah Jackson was okay, but I just thought it was better. And I thought that Caleb was able to trust the fact that, no, what's coming at my face isn't going to be an avalanche right off the jump, and I can hang in there. And sure, obviously, when you got ends coming at you, you have to decide whether you step up or step out or break contain. But I just thought that there was an opportunity there that I think at times that he did not have the luxury of last year. And there were moments too where I thought Ben Johnson schemed up some nice plays. So look, those are some positives that didn't turn into any results. I mean, obviously, I like the fact they went up 17-6 in the game, and it looked like they had an opportunity to kind of throttle the Minnesota Vikings. So I do think that those are hopefully positives that you can see later on in the year that are like long-term, additives to hopefully a successful team. But man, when you blow a 17-6 lead, when the Chicago Bears blow a 10-point lead for the 4th time over the last 13 months, and oh, by the way, it's now with our new head coach. So he just blew a 10-point lead. Unlike the previous head coach, there's a lot of agita. There's a lot of anxiety and nervousness going on in Chicago. But hey, let's go up to Detroit and play the Lions. It should be fun.
I completely understand, but your point about the offensive line, I think, is something good to point out from the perspective of not only who, obviously, proportion, I should say, to the Chicago Bears' performance last year, but also specifically the defense that you guys are facing. Obviously, Brian Flores is well known as one of the better defensive coordinators in the National Football League, and he's a madman with some of the pressure packages that he threw at Caleb too, and that offensive line. And you saw, I think, throughout the game, he's able to navigate some of the things if your pressures are given up from the edges, as long as it's not those unblocked pressures that come from the interior that can throw off the entirety of a play immediately. That's some of the things that are harder to navigate. So, yeah, I appreciate you for trying to find some of those positives, understandably so. But let's go ahead and get into this specific matchup, going up to Detroit to face the Detroit Lions here. And so one place that I want to start as far as the Bears offense versus this Lions defense, the stark difference for me personally when I was watching this game, it really felt like when it came to the second half, the Vikings were able to establish their run game, and the Bears really never found theirs. And I think that ultimately allowed JJ to settle in a way in which it didn't not necessarily help Caleb continue the consistency down the stretch to try and finish that game out. So, question for you: A, do you guys feel, where do you feel as far as this run game is concerned? Can you find more success moving forward? And then B, more specifically, where do you think you have an advantage versus this Lions defense?
So I'll start with the latter of your question there, where the advantage is obviously Ben Johnson's worked intimately with the scheme and the system there for quite some time. Obviously, training camp they go up against that type of defense, so he can maybe pick the pocket on a few plays here and try and obviously work the play action and find the right kind of looks and premium open routes that makes it easy for Caleb on Sunday. I think that's definitely an advantage. For the most part, I thought Caleb played pretty well against the Detroit Lions last year.
Mhm.
One of them obviously was the infamous game where he was driving them down the field and should have gotten them in a position at least to kick a field goal in the game, and the coach wouldn't simply call a timeout. We all know
Right.
that pretty well, but Caleb played well, and I like Caleb indoors, so I think that's definitely an advantage there. In terms of the former of the question, I have concerns about our running game. I really do. And it's a shame because I do think we have the pieces up front, offensive line wise, to make it happen. I'm just not. I've never really been. I had the opportunity I used to write for a fantasy football website, so I covered the Detroit Lions for a bunch of years before I covered the Bears, as well as other teams in the NFC North. And DeAndre Swift has just never been my kind of guy. You know what I mean? Like I think that he's a really talented player, but I do think that he's that second or third type running back that you try and then when you say change of pace, which is obviously a cliche term, but he really kind of is that type of player. So when you put him in a position where he has to be a lead blocker, a lead running back, where he has to hit outside zone, where he has to run power in between the tackles, when he has to do all that other kinds of stuff, I think it diminishes what his true value is. And the Chicago Bears just don't have a punishing runner right now. I like Kyle Monangai, but clearly they don't seem to trust him. And maybe he's trying to earn the trust of the coaching staff with a lot of play action in the offense. Can you pick up a linebacker? Can you at least chip on a defensive end when we need you to do that? You have to earn that trust as a rookie. So, and they got DJ Moore in the backfield sometimes too, and I hate that. So, I do think eventually this Bears team is probably going to be more pass dominant than a run fit type team. And it's going to take a village. And I just don't imagine a world where DeAndre Swift is touching the ball 15 to 20 times a game. So they have to incorporate more of their players, I think, to try and get that run game going. I think it's going to have to be more of a takes a village mentality to find some kind of success in that area.
Yeah, and I understand your questions as far as DeAndre Swift, like you mentioned, obviously him and his immense talent. He does have the vision issues that he just all of a sudden just picks the wrong hole at a current moment in time. And certainly trying to figure out what that running back kind of mix is going to look like. Monangai, as you mentioned, Roshan Johnson, who obviously you could factor into it as well, being a little bit more of the power back. I'm fascinated to see as things go on, does Ben Johnson start to feel like the running back is the more limiting of the two between the offensive line? Because as you
Mm.
mentioned, I think you guys have the pieces up front. I like Wright as a run blocking guy. I think Jackson can do enough of it. Dahlman was a part of a really good Falcons run blocking line previously last year as well. We know Joe Tooney's an all pro for a reason. And I think Braxton Jones can generally move people at the left tackle position. So it'll be interesting to see as things do go on when Ben Johnson maybe makes a move and saying, hey, this isn't necessarily the running back that they can perfectly execute it. But hey, your point is this. I think that Caleb did play well in both of those games against the Lions last year, being inside. Hopefully, you expect that Ben Johnson is going to be able to have those schemed up advantages as well with his intimate knowledge of the Lions, as you mentioned. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and flip to the other side of the ball and kind of talk about the Lions offense going up against this Bears defense. And I think it's important to mention, obviously, Jalen Johnson, and you guys were down at linebacker Edwards, I believe. I always get Edmonds and
Yeah,
Edwards mixed
don't
up.
worry about it. It's Tremaine Edmonds and KJ
Edmonds,
Edwards.
you're right, yeah. They always mix me up a little bit, but I know that Jalen Johnson was a full participant at least on Wednesday. Evans was at least limited, I believe. So we'll see if both those guys play. Obviously, two major pieces of what the Bears want to do on defense. I think what you saw from the Packers last week was an ability to be able to stop the run impressively on early downs versus the Lions defense. Obviously, this is something that the Bears are going to be emphasizing going up against this Lions offense coming up here on Sunday. How do you feel about your Bears defense matching up against what the Lions are going to be presenting and them trying to have a bounce back game here?
Well, we're definitely banged up on our secondary, and that is the strength of our defense as it's currently constituted. And it will be interesting to see. Getting Jalen Johnson out there will be huge because I think the world of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's one of the best receivers in the game. And even when you say, hey, Ben Johnson's no longer there anymore, I think the chemistry between St. Brown and Goff is legit. And I think that they're going to make beautiful music together, at least through 2028 when St. Brown might be a free agent. That being said, I've had some concerns about the Bears defense all season, all preseason long, all off season long. I don't think we have enough edge rush help, or at least something where someone that can play off of Montez Sweat. Because I do think Montez Sweat is a solid player. I just don't know if he's that elite A+ type pass rusher. So if you could have had someone to pair with him, that would have really kind of tied the room together a little bit better. Dio Odingbo had a really strong game against the Minnesota Vikings. Hopefully he gets a chance to keep it up. My key in this game, and you're right, stopping the run is going to be huge. But I just think in general, they got to get pressure up the middle. We gave a lot of money to Grady Jarrett. We believe a lot in Javon Dexter. Andrew Billings last year before he got hurt, according to PFF and a lot of different analytic metrics, obviously was a plus player. So getting pressure up the middle, stuffing David Montgomery. It's going to be hard to contain Jahmyr Gibbs, but just stop those runs in between the tackles and then get people in Jared Goff's face to make him uncomfortable. He can't sit back there all day long or he will absolutely shred us and tear us apart. So, I mean, it's going to be a challenge. And I'm thinking this is going to be a high scoring game. But pressure up the middle, I think, is going to be the best way and most effective way to slow down the run game, slow down Jared Goff, and give the Bears a chance to win.
Yeah, look, I completely understand, and that's why I wanted to ask you kind of particularly about the defensive trenches on the inside, because I think that's where the Packers kind of made their hay, and obviously Michael Parsons will have be the headliner as far as what he was able to do in certain snaps on the edge, and certainly beating Penei Sewell was no small feat, but that's what Michael Parsons brings to the table. But I thought that the performance, particularly of guys like Lucas Van Ness and Devontae Wyatt versus the young interior of the defense, the Detroit Lions, obviously they brought in new guys with Ragnar retiring, as Zeitler moving on. They have those, type of transitionary periods that they're trying to go through, and I think the Packers took good advantage of it. You mentioned obviously Grady Jarrett, Dexter; those are guys that are going to have to show up early and often to have the Bears defense continue to either disrupt the run or get pressure in Jared Goff's face, which obviously we always know if you can get pressure on Goff early and often, especially on that interior, then you can force him into some bad decisions as far as the game goes on.
Yeah, and if I can add really quick too, just
Yeah.
just to your point, because I love what you're saying right now is that when you're talking about a young offensive or an offensive line, excuse me, that's trying to gel, that hasn't had the 3 seasons together like the unit that the Lions had last year. Dennis Allen, dial up some heat, man.
Mhm.
Make them guess on some looks. Make them have to pass off and make those type of decisions and see if you can get them to make a mistake and see if you can get a free runner at the quarterback. So that might be another method the Chicago Bears could use to try and win.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though we mentioned obviously Jalen Johnson being back because of how DA likes to call his defense, that puts a lot of emphasis on the secondary. Kyler Gordon did not practice today, so we'll see ultimately. That's probably not a great sign for him playing. But even having Jalen Johnson back, to your point of how great Amon-Ra St. Brown is, and obviously Jameson Williams and some of the Tesla stuff that you saw during preseason, if you're going to send that heat early on, you have to have a belief as far as your secondary is concerned. And obviously, Jalen Johnson being back is going to be a big piece of it. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here with your X factor. Either side of the ball, you can take your pick, and then a best bet and your game pick for this game coming up versus the Lions.
So let's start. I'm going to go X Factor. I'm going to go with the guy who the state of Michigan loved whole bunch last year. And now, after disappearing in week one, I want to see Colston Loveland make some plays.
Hmm.
I want the Detroit Lions to look at Colston Loveland and go, wow, they got their version of Sam Laporta. And go, uh-oh, like, we're having a hard time stopping DJ. We're trying to stop Roma Dunze. Now we got to stop Colston Loveland. Um, I don't really have any empirical evidence to say that it's going to happen, DMac, but that's just what I want. That's just what I want to see, man. I want to see our 10th
Hmm.
overall pick in the first round of this NFL draft. I want to see him out there as a matchup nightmare, a guy who can create open space for himself, the guy that has length and athleticism and physicality to move the chains or catch a seam route or do whatever it is. And he truly can be that X factor. If he can be a guy that when we're talking about accuracy with Caleb and trying to, read the field and where his eyes should be going, they should be going and looking at this big giant dude sitting in the middle of the field and moving slot corners off of him and bodying up linebackers. So that I'm going to go
Yeah.
Colston Loveland with my X factor on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't blame you one bit. I was actually surprised that he wasn't featured more as far as the game plan was concerned. I hope to see him catch a few more passes
Seriously.
coming up here versus the Lions. But yeah, go ahead and hit me with your game pick.
So game pick, man, I got to be honest with you. So I picked the Bears to beat the Vikings 27-23. I got the score kind of right. I got the result wrong. Obviously, the Minnesota Vikings won 27-24. So I'm 0-1 on the season. And I got to be honest with you, man. I'm picking the Detroit Lions in this game. I've seen enough, and I'm happy to be wrong. Like, people in this life are way too consumed with like being scared to be wrong in this business. I am happy to be wrong on this pick, but I just don't think the Chicago Bears are ready to roll right now. I know Detroit's reeling after their performance against Green Bay. They didn't look very good, but they still got a lot of guys that have been playing a lot of football together, and they're going to be at their home opener. So to be honest with you, man, I'm picking Detroit Lions like 24 to like 16 or something like that. I don't think all of the problems and issues and things that Bears fans are scared about this week, I don't think they go away this week. Hopefully we can see some small signs of some progress, but I'm starting to believe right now with the Chicago Bears, I think this thing is probably going to have to play itself out through week 4, and then maybe into that bye week when they come back, maybe we start to see who the Chicago Bears will be offensively the rest of the season at that time. Right now, I'm not buying it. So I'm preaching patience right now, and hold your loved ones close, because I don't think the Chicago Bears win. They might fall to 0-2 this week, and I'm happy to be wrong.
Hey, look, I completely understand it. I don't blame you for making that pick at all. I think that your point about patience for the Chicago Bears move forward is a big one. And certainly, I will give you this bit of hope as we wrap it up here. The last person to pick against their team, my friend Ben from Mafia Members Pod, picked against the Bills in week 1 on Max Marquee matchups. And obviously, we saw that they made a great comeback versus the Ravens, ended up winning. So I'll give
Let's
you that bit of hope. I'll give you that bit of hope before we go ahead and wrap it up. Once again, thank you, Joey, so much for joining me here today. I hope you guys go check out CH Go, I should say, covering the Bears. Obviously, more stuff as far as Big Ten football and all the like, all across Chicago sports. Joey, once again, thank you so much for joining me. Hope you have a great day, man.
My pleasure, man. It was a lot of fun. Anytime.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that Bears portion as far as this preview is concerned on Max Marquee matchup. Coming up here for the Lions portion of the preview, we are fortunate to have another first time guest here on the channel, DMW Sports. Got Pride of Detroit's own Jerry Mallory to come on up. Jerry, how are you doing today to talk about the Detroit Lions?
I'm doing good. I mean, I'd be doing better if this was like a 1-0 Detroit Lions, but I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. The funny thing is, we forget as we go throughout all the excitement of the offseason and leading up to the season, just how much that 0-1 can affect your mental health as you're going throughout the rest of the
Man,
week, obviously leading up.
it's been crazy. I think I'm a little more measured than a lot of the Detroit fans, but Dan Campbell made a good point about it. He said, he was okay with it. They asked him, like, fans are going crazy there. He said, well, our expectations are high now. I know you guys got high expectations too with the new regime. So, I'm a little more measured, but my panic meter is not at 0. I will say that.
I completely understand it. And, for a team that now has entered its incredibly successful era, the Lions have gotten used to obviously being at the top of the division, being one of the best teams in the National Football League. Some of that comes with the suffering of success, but it's important to have a guiding hand like Dan Campbell, of course, not only to keep the team moving in the right direction, of course, within the locker room, but also put the fans' mind at ease, at different portions. And speaking of that success, some of the kind of ramifications of it is that of course you lose players, lose coordinators. Obviously, that is a major storyline for the Lions coming into this entire season, and we maybe saw some aspects of it as far as on the field for Week 1. I want to ask you, as far as the Lions entering this entire kind of new era, talking about the ability to transition from, the Ben Johnsons, the Aaron Glenns of the world, and then also from some of the mainstays, particularly along the offensive line, as far as the Frank Ragnalls, the Kevin Zeitlers. How do you feel about the Lions in that transitionary state? Obviously, maybe outside of what you saw in week 1 specifically, but just in general for this full season outlook.
So on the defensive side, let's take a step back. We figured both coordinators would be gone this offseason. So we weren't too surprised that we would have new offensive and defensive coordinators the last maybe 2 off seasons, maybe even 3 off seasons. There's been rumors of both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn going elsewhere, especially Ben Johnson. If you recall, there was some rumors of him going to Washington and spurning their advances. And then with Aaron Glenn, he's been in the mix too. So we figured, this is like the 3rd year of a successful regime that we would lose them. I will say, though, on defense, whereas the incumbent wasn't a surprise, Kelvin Shepard, many of us thought that on the offensive side, Tanner Engstrand, who is the offensive coordinator for Aaron Glenn in New York, a lot of us figured he might be the pick. I don't remember anyone saying, Johnny Morton would be the guy. He had spent some time here in Detroit before. So we were a little surprised by that. But all signs at camp was like, things are going good. The defense is looking good. They had this Aiden Hutchinson rule. I don't know if the Bears fans are familiar with this. He was supposedly so dominant in practice that, they had this little special rule for him so he couldn't get to the quarterback so they could actually run plays. It's like, well, we can't even run our sets because he's getting to the quarterback. So we had a lot of confidence. We had a real good joint practice with Miami. So once game one entered, all of the worries start to kick in because the offense is stagnant. The defense, especially the first half, just, giving up those chunk plays. So I think the temperature has mellowed out a little bit. We're like 4 or 5 days removed, but that first day, that second day, it was a lot of worrying, a lot of tense, not just fans, but reporters. We had I don't know if you want to call it cool. We had an interesting or notable back and forth just yesterday with one of the local reporters. He was kind of grilling Dan Campbell on the offensive coordinator and the lack of explosive plays. And Dan usually is measured. He's intense, but he's measured. And you could tell he was fed up with him. He started asking the reporter, well, what do you mean? What did Jared Goff say? Why don't you take a look at the film last year when we played on the road, different things like that. So fans, reporters, a little worried, but I think we're getting better now. You know how that is. Come Thursday, Friday, all the hope starts to restore until the Sunday game.
Yeah, you start looking ahead, of course. And I definitely understand that. I thought that interesting offensive coordinator choice was something to watch. Turner, of course, had a really nice debut for the New York Jets and all the points that they were able to put up. And obviously, things did not go as the Lions maybe would have hoped, to say the least, as far as the offensive side of the ball, for sure, in that week one debut. And obviously, going on the road in Lambeau to start off your season is not the easiest place to start off. And then you add in the Micah Parsons factor and the fact that the Packers are obviously very excited for what their season is going to look like, of course. So the question I would have for you, just before we get into the specific matchup is concerned, what were, at least one thing for you coming out of week one that was extremely concerning? And then if you could, any positives that you had outside of week one, obviously tough to find a little bit with the 0-1 start, but even still.
I would say, I'm not too worried about much of anything. One that I want to look out for is the run game, specifically the offensive line. We've been spoiled now for, 3-4 seasons when you got a Frank Ragnow anchoring things, Taylor Decker, Penei Sewell, our running game has been so successful. And so that allows the play action. That's where Jared Goff operates. We run to set up the pass. And so with things changing, our complete interior is different. Even though Graham Glasgow was there last year, he goes from guard to center. Christian Mahogany did start some games toward the end of last year, but he's still a second year guy. He didn't start the full season. And then we drafted Tate Ratledge. We tried Tate Ratledge at center. I don't know if that was just to give him a taste of it. Some people thought that maybe he didn't do well in camp at center. So they said, well, we'll move Graham Glasgow, who has played center, played at University of Michigan, played it for Detroit. And so I would say that's the biggest thing. Just the offensive line. It was a lot of miscommunication. And if we can't run the ball, Jared Goff isn't – well, he's a good improviser, but, he needs that run game because he isn't the most dynamic quarterback. So I would say that the offensive line and opening up some holes for our talented running backs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely understand why you would go there first. And that's exactly where we're going to start talking about this matchup as well. Because what I was able to see as far as on tape with that kind of trio, Ratledge, Glasnow, and obviously Mahogany, all of those guys were a little bit new to the position, not necessarily fully so, especially in Mahogany and Glasnow's place. But the reality situation is there were a lot of times in which the Packers were able to kind of take advantage of them, whether it was Lucas Van Ness kind of moving inside, especially on late passing downs. Devontae Wyatt, I thought, had a very nice game from the interior as well. You're going up against a Bears team that obviously has guys like Dervon Dexter, who's a young guy that they're very excited about, older veterans as far as Grady Jarrett is concerned to be able to use on the interior. I want to ask you about that specific aspect of this matchup, and then also in a general sense, where do you think you can find those advantages versus this Bears defense?
I feel like when it comes to the offensive line, defensive line, the cool thing about you guys playing on Monday night, you get to kind of just focus on that one game. So it's Bears and it's Vikings. It's two of our division opponent, so you can really chime in and look and see what you guys brought to the table. I was a fan of Dexter in the draft prospect. I want to say he went to Florida. He was one of those guys when you do all those mock drafts, it's like, hey, we could use a guy like that, an interior guy that's got some movement. Tano Passigno made an appearance, which was cool.
Yeah.
You guys got a couple of my draft crushes. He was another one. I think he went to Kansas City. Now he's there. He took the quarterback down. And then there's Montez Sweat. So Sweat is he's fast, he's effective, he was all over the field. I don't think he had a sack, but I just kept seeing his name, whether it was like a tackle for loss or he would get close. And I feel as though those type of rushers sometimes gives Taylor Decker issues. Sometimes when they're faster and kind of athletic, which is kind of, what Montez Sweat can bring. I remember his combine. I mean, he was just elite athleticism. And so I feel as though that's an area that I'm going to kind of key in on. I'm a little bit worried about. I feel like in terms of positives, some of our run game issues is just the fact that we have to gel. The rookie, Tate Ratledge, he's going to get better each week. I think Mahogany's going to get better each week. But even as a whole unit, the offensive line is really predicated on just kind of being one solid group of guys that kind of have chemistry. They know their assignments. It wasn't just us getting overpowered or just not having the talent. It was a lot of miscommunications. Earlier this week, Taylor Decker commented on there's a infamous play where we almost got a safety and it just looked like the floodgates were open, right? And it's like, well, what's going on? Well, he mentioned how Taylor Decker, and Tate Ratledge, it was a missed assignment. They went one way. They had one assignment. They thought they were executed. The other three guys went the other way. I think those things gets cleaned up. And so that's where I have hope. I don't expect us to be that rusty. We also don't play in the preseason. And so even last year, the first 2 weeks of the season, our offense was kind of rusty. When we played the Rams opening night, we won, but there were some missed opportunities. That next week against Tampa Bay, same thing. And it wasn't really until I believe the third game was against Arizona, we started to shake off some of that rust. So I'm kind of hopeful from that standpoint. I don't think it's as much as a talent deficiency as shaking off the rust and then those guys being a little bit more cohesive.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, as you mentioned, obviously, guys, as far as the draft was concerned, like Mahogany out of BC, I thought that he was a really talented guard. Obviously, Ratledge is an interior offensive line prospect out of Georgia. I think both of those guys have talent. We've seen Glass now be effective in this league as well. It obviously is one of those things that I do think comes down to the chemistry as far as this offensive line is concerned. And like you said, more time to gel, even obviously not necessarily playing during the preseason, giving you that runway to really come together and understand those assignments to be able to attack. And ultimately, as you pointed out to start out, even though Jared Goff is a good, quarterback and has the ability to improvise within the pocket very specifically, this offense is based around being able to run the ball and put the defense on its heels and then be able to have everything work off of that and create those explosives, accordingly. So I completely understand where you're coming from as far as that being the big key as well. With that being said, we can go ahead and flip to the other side of the ball. Lions defense maybe gave up a little bit more in the secondary than they would have certainly liked as far as what the Packers offense was able to attack them with. We saw some of the up and down nature. Obviously, the Chicago Bears offense itself on Monday Night Football with Caleb missing some throws, but also during the scripted portion, obviously under Ben Johnson's tutelage, that certainly looked good in the opening portion against the Minnesota Vikings. Talk to me a little bit about the Lions' ability, specifically on the back end, to deal with the variety of weapons that Chicago does have, and then also where you feel like you guys can have an advantage against the Chicago Bears offense. And I do want you to speak more about Aiden Hutchinson because he was, the leader in the clubhouse as far as defensive player of the year before he got hurt last year. I'm glad to see he's back playing football.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a heartbreaker when he went down, the way he went down. Things were going so good for him, for the team. He's a hometown guy here. So we've been following Aiden Hutchinson now for many years, Michigan guy. And so it's good to see him back. However, that does mean he didn't play. It's been about 10 months, 11 months since he's played. So it's a little bit of rust there, but he's going to get double teamed. So he's going to have to win some of those. And then the complimentary guys are going to have to really feast on one-on-one looks. So Marcus Davenport, has to feast on those one-on-one looks. Tyleek Williams and DJ Reader, along with Roy Lopez, did good in the interior stopping the run. So I do like that. Swift didn't light the world on fire last Monday. And so hopefully we can get more of that. But just the defense as a whole, it was kind of a tale of two halves. The first half, we gave up like big chunk plays. Again, missed assignments. Terrion Arnold fell for a pick play. And then he got injured, which some people thought it was another deep pass. Maybe it had something to do with the injury he suffered. But our back end is still our strength. I mean, you're looking at it's the best safety tandem in the NFL. And with a guy like Brian Branch, especially, he can be used in a number of ways, not just in the safety role. He can play, in the nickel. He can run in for blitz. I'm hoping maybe we do a little bit more of that because we had something. This was bugging a lot of us. We kept forcing third down against the Packers, but then we would give it up. And several of those, we had our defensive ends, Davenport and Hutchinson, go out into coverage. It's like we have done it. Aiden Hutchinson has done that. He's gotten interceptions, but that was kind of like very frustrating. I'd rather give up a 3rd and 12, but Hutchinson is going after the quarterback as opposed to you look out and he's doing some type of zone look. So that's one of those things I'm looking out for. But like I said, the second half was much better. We kind of held our water. Kelvin Shepard, he just had his press conference. I believe it was a little bit earlier today. I just had a chance to listen to it. His confidence is infectious. He's confident that a lot of those issues will be cleaned up. And I feel like if we can feed off kind of how we held Green Bay in check the second half, we might be okay. Because I'm still, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm still seeing like some erratic plays from Caleb Williams, like when I was watching Monday night. He's good, he's got talent, but he is still young. Every now and then I kind of see some, erratic plays there. So I'm hoping perhaps, with us being at home and the crowd, we can force a few mistakes. But just like we're gelling, you guys are gelling too. This is all new, Ben Johnson's offense and whatnot. So I'm excited for the game, but I do feel confident that the defense won't look as bad, and maybe we can get after the quarterback a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the ways in which I believe I saw a quote from Aiden Hutchinson earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday, talking about the fact that he doesn't want to be dropping back in coverage too often as well,
Yeah,
and he wants to get after the quarterback in that standpoint, and be used to be able, obviously, to win those double teams, but at least open up things for his fellow defensive linemen as well.
absolutely.
So I completely get it from that aspect. But yeah, look, Caleb did have his ups and downs. He did miss a few throws. Obviously, you guys have an incredibly opportunistic back end. As you mentioned, obviously the safety tandem is excellent between Joseph and Branch, and the versatility of him as well is key too. So I expect that there will be some, different wrinkles thrown out, and I don't think there's going to be too much of Hutchinson dropping out in coverage as far as this game is concerned. And I think that that's going to be a big thing. If can you get those 1 or 2 turnovers that can swing the game, certainly, if you can take advantage of some of those Williams Aaron's throws as well. So with that being said, we can go ahead and talk about kind of the wrap up portion as far as your game picks, your X factor could be on either side, and then the best bet you have for this game.
So I got us winning the game. I feel like a good stat that we can hang our hat on is that Dan Campbell has not lost 2 games in a row. And I guess if you want to count the Washington game into this game, but he hasn't lost 2 games in a season. It's coming up on like 2.5 in a while. I think the last time we may have lost 2 games in a row was when we started 1-6 several years ago. I could be wrong on that, but the point is we recover well. We learn from the mistakes. It seems like the team, they don't give in to that pressure. Typically after a loss, whether it was last year, even though it was only 2 losses, the year before it was 5 losses, we always respond well. And being at home, so I'm picking us to win. I feel as though it'll be close. It's a division game, but I do like our chances. In terms of
Yeah.
X factors, for me, it's going to have to be the running backs. And my thing is this: we know how good Jahmyr Gibbs is, and he can run between the tackles as fast as he is, as electric. He can run between the tackles. But if it's not there, I want to see us employ what we did back when we didn't have the best offensive line and we would get running backs in space. I remember years where we would have to be creative and get Javid Best in space if it's a pitch, if it's, you know what I mean? Same with Reggie Bush because we didn't have the best offensive lines. We've got to set up Jahmyr Gibbs for better success. So if the holes aren't there, we got to find a way to get him the ball in other ways, quick pitches. So I feel as though he could be an X factor for our team. As far as you guys' team, you know, I'm a Caleb Williams, not a fan. I'm a fan of his game. And I feel like he's one of those guys to where, you know, his youth does show. He'll do boneheaded plays here and there, but then he'll do something where it's like the arm talent is undeniable. You know, this play that he does, you know, here it's like not many guys can do that. He has the ability to extend plays. You know, I don't think he gets enough credit for as good as he can move, you know, whether that's evading would be guys to take them down or, you know, running for a key first down. So for you guys, I think an X factor could be Caleb Williams. We weren't able to really handle Jordan Love. He's kind of similar in some ways. Like he can be elusive. He's sneaky fast and has and is an arm talent. In terms of best bets, for one, I feel as though defensively, I have a pretty good feeling that Aiden Hutchinson is going to make some plays. He's going to be on the stat line. It was a stat saying that our kicker, not Jack Fox, but Jake Bates had more tackles than Aiden Hutchinson.
Wouldn't
It's a
expect that to continue.
safe bet that he's going to show up, whether it's a sack, whether it's multiple pressures. I don't care if it's a double team. I don't care if it's a triple team. That's a guy that takes a lot of pride and being the type of player that he is. And he also is he's a film junkie for as athletic as he is and physically gifted. You know, he's going to look for ways, whether it's counters, whether it's employing the spin move. That's a best bet for me. Aiden Hutchinson, his name will be called much more. And I'll go ahead and say it. He'll take down the quarterback. He's not going to get shut out again. He'll take down the quarterback. So that's my best bet. My X factor is Jahmyr Gibbs, and my best bet, Aiden Hutchinson's name will be called this upcoming week for sure.
Look, Aiden Hutchinson is not a guy that you can hold down for too long, to say the least. I would not be surprised to have his name called, taking down Caleb Williams within this game coming up today. Appreciate you so much for coming by, Jerry. Please, everybody, go by, check out Pride of Detroit, all the work that he's doing over there. Thank you guys so much for coming by to DMW Sports and Max Marquee Matchup. Jerry, anything before you go?
Hey, thanks for having us on. You know, by us, I mean all of Pride of Detroit. We all represent each other. It's some good stuff over there. I know this is primarily, you know, Bears fans, but it's an objective look at Pride of Detroit. So to kind of prep yourself for this upcoming week, it's not all sunshine and roses. We got a lot of film breakdown, a lot of analytics. We kind of got a guy for every area. So to kind of get yourselves prepped for the type of Lions team you're going to be faced with, and I feel as though we're the most unbiased, yet most educational Detroit Lions website. Head over to the Pride of Detroit and check us out and get you prepped for the game. And thanks for having me on, most importantly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, please do go over there, check it out at Pride Detroit.